featuring the people who make York special.
It's the warmness and it's the humour. The people who make it.
The people who work in the factory are very, very proud of the fact that this is the home of Kit Kat.
And the organisation's doing amazing things.
A fair number of women say that Kira has saved their lives, so we know we make a big difference.
From tourism and history to business, charity and the arts.
We are as equally important in the history of this country as London is and as Oxford is.
I love the idea that York becomes the UK's alternative to London.
This is Between These Walls, a podcast for York with Sophie Hudson. It's no secret that York's become a magnet for lovers of magical fantasy, with the Shambles attracting wizarding fans from around the world. In the midst of this craze sits a humble potions apothecary selling weird and wonderful drinks delighting kids of all ages. The Potions Cauldron started as a wacky idea for two York businessmen who have since grown a retail and attractions empire spanning the UK. I had a chat with one of the founders and directors, Phil Pinder, to talk about being in business in York, why storytelling is essential for a good brand, and their attempts to slay the dragons on Dragon's Den. Phil Pinder, thank you so much for joining us on Between the Walls podcast.
Very excited to be here. Yeah, no, it's really cool. And how cool to have a podcast dedicated solely to York. Very exciting.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so you're on one of the very first episodes.
That even cooler. And who better to get than me? Not that I'm a big head or anything.
Absolutely. Well, no, thank you very much for joining me. I just sort of thought that with you being such a kind of prominent, I'd say, figurehead in York, because you're quite well known.
Yep.
We'll talk about your business in a moment, and we'll talk about everything that you've achieved. I want to start first of all. I mean, you're fresh from the York Press Business Awards.
Yeah, I didn't actually go, but a few weeks ago, we were at the York Press Awards and we won an award. I nearly said the name. I can't remember what it was. It was the retail hospitality and something else award.
Retail hospitality and leisure.
That's right. Yeah. Well done. I didn't enter it, as you can tell, and it's one of the hardest awards to get, I think, because it encompasses so much. But we're up against Spark, who we thought were probably going to win, and up against last year's winners, City Cruisers. But we took it away this year, so it's our second York Press Award, and we've won in 2 categories now. So our challenge now is to try and get a different category next time.
Oh, fantastic. How does it feel getting an award, a local award? Because you guys, we'll talk about it in a moment, you're sort of spanning out into other areas of the UK, but having a York award, how does that feel?
I think it's still quite nice, and it's really good to, we are committed a lot in York. We've got maybe 30 of our staff work in York, so it's still quite nice to show that we're doing stuff and it's still getting recognised. So yeah, really, really important to get local awards still as much as it is to get them elsewhere.
Well, congratulations.
And thank you.
I was very pleased to see that you won. Let's talk about the business. So it's the Potions Cauldron Group, and talk me through it.
Yes.
So you've got the Potions Cauldron on the Shambles.
Yep.
Which looks fantastic and always has a queue out the door.
No, it did.
You've got the Hole in Wand.
Yep.
Wizard Golf. And then have you got the Potions Express?
Yep.
Yep.
We don't talk about that very much.
And then you're expanding out. So you have the Hole in Wand in Blackpool.
Yep. And we got the Potions Cauldron in Edinburgh as well. So yeah. And by the time people are listening to this now, will be we're very few weeks away now from opening in Keswick for the Hole in Wand in Keswick. It's not public yet, but you're hearing it here first.
Exclusive.
Yeah, exclusive. So yeah, the Hole in Wand Keswick could be our next venue. We're opening, and then after that we've got a couple more in the pipeline as well. We're actually already under negotiation. I've actually got loads of properties currently under offer, and it's just deciding which ones I want to move with. So yeah, and even a new venture, I think, for 2024 will open as well, probably in York.
Amazing.
But a new wizard-themed business tied into the group.
So the first one was the Potions Cauldron on the Shambles, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah. So that was my shop. Previously, it was Cuffs & Co., a cufflink shop. I had this strange idea that cufflinks were the future. I did that for best part of 10, 15 years. Business was coming to an end. I was looking to move into a smaller premises. And Ben and myself, business partner Ben Fry, who people may know from Minster FM days, we did our own little, not a podcast, but like a little 5-minute slot each week on the radio talking about business in York. And Ben and I were walking at the Shambles one evening, and I said, I'm going to give this shop up in the Shambles. And he said, oh, you can't do that. We must do something with it. So from the bottom of the street to walk into the shop, we came up with a new idea. And the idea was to create for want of a better word, a pub where kids who loved Harry Potter and wizardry could come and think they were in those films. And that was the whole concept, really.
So from cufflinks to potions.
Yeah, and honestly, that was July, maybe end of July, August 2018, and hadn't even moved out Cuffs & Co. then, and I said, right, let's do it. And then we opened on October the 20th, something like that, 2018, just over 5 years ago. Yeah, so it was all devised in less than 6 weeks. The whole concept of the business. We thought it would be ridiculously easy to start our own soft drinks company. It wasn't. Really incredibly difficult. We started with our, as we call them now, everlasting potions, where you mix them with slush and make your own slushy potions, which we still do to this day and still very popular. But we really wanted to do our own kind of canned or bottled soft drinks. I'd always made cufflinks and shirts. And to be honest, it'd always been easy to tag your orders onto bigger companies' orders. I used to have my shirts made by the same companies that made Lewin's and Tyrwhitt's shirts and all these big high street brands. And you just get, I'll have 20 in that design, 20 in that design, and just get your own label put inside. Dead easy. And then I thought it'd be exactly the same for soft drinks. Ring somebody up and go, I want some cola, stick my logo on it instead. And they're like, oh, no, you need your own recipe. It's like, what? So we found somebody down south who would white label. So they'd sell us some glass bottles with no labels on. And then we could stick our own labels on. But the problem was they were much smaller than we were, it seemed, at the end, and we were actually growing faster than they were. So when we came to get our second order, they were like, oh, we're not making any for another 2 months. And we were like, what? And then we waited another 2 months, and they were like, oh, no, we're still not making any. So we decided we had to jump and basically go into the role of making soft drinks. And after so 2019 now, we're at April 2019, we launched our own range of bottled soft drinks, and the rest, they say, is magical history, really. So to that day now, we've got 7 soft drinks. We sold over probably 600,000 bottles last year. We'll probably do 1 million bottles this year.
Wow.
And yeah, it's going quite well.
Because you sell into other retailers as well, don't you?
Yeah, we sell to other retailers and around the world. So yeah, we sell, we shipped over 150,000 bottles to the US last year. We'll probably do double that this year. We're in 120 HMV stores across the country. Wow. So that's our biggest customer. But we also supply the likes of Centre Parks, Hamleys, lots of kind of attractions where if you're buying a bottle of Coke and it's £3, you feel like you're getting ripped off. But if you're getting something a bit more magical and a bit cooler, that more, you're getting something for your money. So we sell into the venues where attraction and experience is essential, and seem to do quite well from it.
So what I'm getting from that is when you started, I mean, it's like starting any business, isn't it? You never quite know what you're getting into. So you went from thinking, well, soft drinks, easy, to actually devising flavours and, I don't know, would you call it mixology? I don't know.
Yeah, well, totally. It was, and I'd always been kind of like a bit of an experimenter with making cocktails and stuff like that. So I'd always knew what was possible. We'd seen the shimmers and things like that. Didn't realise the process that was involved in making a soft drink. Didn't realise that, maybe people listening won't realise that every soft drink you drink has been pasteurised. So
right.
And gets heated up, which in most cases makes the shimmer disappear. So we had this instant problem of the idea we wanted didn't actually work. So then we had to come up with a way of creating a recipe where it didn't disappear and creating a process, and quite technical stuff, really.
I mean, to the Harry Potter fans, that actually sounds like some sort of potions class that you've had to take.
But basically, yes, and find people and that was the other thing, is finding companies that would actually want to work with you, because the other thing about the shimmer is it sticks to everything, including stainless steel. So, if you're making drinks after us and you're making bottled water, you're not going to have bottled water. You're going to have bottled water with bits of shiny glitter in. So, that's been a process. We're now on our 3rd bottling company, because the previous 2 went bust. Because at the bottom end of the market, there's not actually that much business for small production. So you've got to be at the stage where you're making this many bottles, but getting there is really hard. So it's probably one of the hardest sectors to get into. Right. Unless you make it yourself, and then you find out that the plant costs £4 million, and why would you make it yourself when you got to invest that kind of money? So some weird decisions along the way and some weird routes, but I think we're in a really good place now as a business, and we've now got a level of cream, I'm trying to think of a better word than cream, in the business of like luxury of, we've got a marketing assistant, we've got people in roles that will just enhance the business as we open extra venues. So open extra venues won't actually cost that much money. Yeah. So as we grow now in the next 2 years, I think the growth will be much quicker now. Yeah.
Let's go back. We'll talk about the growth a bit more in a moment, but let's go back to starting on the Shambles.
Yep.
And so you were there for quite a few years before Potions Cauldron. How would you think the Shambles has sort of changed over the years? Because I'm assuming it's always been sort of an attraction in itself, being such a historic sort of monument in York. How do you think it's changed in the business landscape?
To be fair, it's changed enormously, and I think one of the early things I quickly realised, because I came into the Shambles, my business started in London in Covent Garden Market. I was crazy, went in at the deep end, opened the shop there, in one of the busiest places in Europe to open a shop. Online, very successful with the cufflinks, and then I moved back to York after the London bombings, because the London bombings basically put an end to tourism in London for about 6 months, and it really caned that business. Luckily, my lease was ending at the same time, and I left that shop. In hindsight, not a great thing, so I've learned a lot about selling leases on since then, which, in hindsight, I wish I'd known then. And I brought the business back to Yorkshire, and had a great online business already. I did for a year before I took premises in the Shambles, but the idea was, I need premises anyway. Why not have a shop facing front that you do the internet orders from? Yeah. Cufflinks don't take up much room, so it was a luxury. So for me, opening the Shambles wasn't actually that big a decision. But for a lot of the shops down there, and you probably see this over the years, is that except a handful, most of the shops have changed 4 or 5 times in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think it's only in the last couple of years where actually having a shop in the Shambles is profitable. And I think that's to do with some of the kind of brands coming in and actually having a concept that is a bit different to just opening a bread shop or a shop with no real USP, for want of a better way of phrase. And I think the first one was kind of the shop must not be named. Opened a shop that was solely dedicated to just selling Harry Potter merch. And to be fair, up until that point, there was 5 shops in the Shambles selling Harry Potter merch.
Yeah.
But none of them had decided to go the full hog and only sell that. And I think that shows you that actually in business, sometimes the braver ideas are the ones that work. And that's what we realised when we opened our shop. We didn't want to sell Harry Potter merch. I scared Ben off selling any kind of licensed merch. Another idea we looked at was like doing Marvel Avengers type stuff, which both Ben and I love. But I said, to be fair, there's no margins in it. When you're selling people's stuff that's already been made, you're looking at 20-25% margins. So you've got to sell a lot of it before you make any money. And that's why we dreamt up creating our own apothecary, really. Like
you say, there is now a bit of a theme down the Shambles. People come to York, the first place they want to go to is the Shambles. The amount of times when I've got off the bus and people say, where's the Shambles? It's the place where people want to go. It's kind of the mecca for wanting to see a piece of real history. But then there's that tie-in with the whole Diagon Alley sort of feel. And the shops that are there now, the retailers that are there, have all kind of grasped that concept, haven't they? And it's become a bit of a thing.
Yeah, completely. And to be fair, we've used some of the history in the street as well, and I have to say one of our kind of early cheeky things we did was we put a blue plaque on our shop dedicated to our original founder, Phileas Fry. See what we did there?
Yeah.
And we actually ended up on the Blue Plaques website.
Really?
Yeah. To the point where they sent me an email asking for more information on Phileas Fry because they didn't know who he was. And I was like, oh my God, I think we've made it. And so, yeah, it just goes to show you sometimes that it's that, and I think it's that full story. So you can just open a business, dead easy to do, but actually having the backstory to go with it and the full concept that allows people to buy into that's where you need to be, I think. And yeah, or you just need to be selling other people's stuff. That's the 2 options.
Yeah.
You need to either go full depth or easy depth.
The whole storytelling around your brand, I mean, that definitely came to light when you appeared on Dragon's Den. Because you kind of came in, you were very different to a lot of the other people.
Well, we took the first and only ever puppet into the den, which was one, which...
Grobblenuke.
Yeah, Grobblenuke, yeah. And they could have killed us in the den. Apparently they said to us after the edit, because it took 3.5 hours filming in the den.
Really? Wow.
Which you can tell a little bit in the edit, because I go much redder by the end of it, because you get no water, you got no drink.
Gosh. Very
hot lights. And you get grilled, as you can imagine, absolutely grilled. And our whole process started off really, really negative. There was a really comical bit in the middle where Sarah realised who Ben was because she used to listen to Minster FM. And she was like, oh my God, man, I used to listen to you every morning. And there was this big super fan bit in the middle where she was like, I can't believe you're here now. And then Peter Jones telling us that, is this some wind up for the radio? And giving us more abuse. It was brutal. And we took the puppet in. The puppet was stood on, we took in a plinth that we'd stand him on afterwards. And halfway through, he just decided to nosedive off the plinth.
Oh, no.
And then one of them went, oh, take it, Grobblenuck's out then. And it was just like, oh, that's going to be on telly, isn't it? That's going to be on telly, the gargoyle. And then it wasn't. And you're like, wow, okay. But apparently if you get an offer in the Den, the way they edit it is completely different to if you don't get an offer. So that was quite nice. And yeah, we got an offer. So
yeah, and am I right in thinking this was the biggest single offer?
From Peter Jones, yeah. So
yeah.
Peter Jones, so he's made investments before that have been collectively worth 200 grand, but he's only ever put in, I think, up to like 50 or 80,000 pounds into those offers. His largest ever single offer previously was 150, I think, and we asked for 200,000, and he offered us all the money, and we turned him down.
Well,
so,
it was. I mean, at first watching it, I was like, "What are you doing?" And I think a lot of people thought that, but then it kind of, when you thought about it, it was understandable because he originally was asking for 33. He was asking for a third, wasn't he?
Yeah. And I think one of the other things we did, which I look back on now and kind of like smile at, is that we also managed to negotiate when there were no other dragons in the Den. Yeah. So there was only Peter in with an offer, and normally when there's only one offer on the table, they won't negotiate. And we got him down from 33.33% to 15, just by saying, nah, you did better than that. And he did. So it showed you kind of, I think that proved to us as well that what the business was worth. We hadn't opened in Blackpool at that time. We were actually shop fitting in Blackpool whilst filming, and then it didn't go out for another 9 months. So in that 9-month period before it went on air, we'd actually doubled in size. So by the time it went out, it was the right decision. To be fair, I think the thing we didn't realise about Dragon's Den was that it's a bit of a loan. So they want repayment in full, but they also want their shares.
Right.
And then they want the dividends on top.
Yeah.
And you're like, it's just crap borrowing, really.
It's a lot, isn't it?
It is.
But how do you... I mean, even without the investment, how do you think that the being on Dragon's Den has impacted business? Has it impacted it positively? Has it caused a buzz?
Yeah, certainly. And it's certainly got us a little bit more wide known. I mean, I think the weekend after it, I was in McDonald's and a guy came up to me and went, I think you did the right thing. And I'm like, what, milkshakes? He went, no, on the Den. And I was like, what? And didn't expect a delivery driver in McDonald's to recognise me and start talking to me about Dragon's Den. So you do get recognised, which was a surprise. And you still get people asking questions about it. I mean, well, you're here now asking me questions about it. So yeah, it's and people do watch it for, with iPlayer and things like that now, and YouTube. It's out there for forever. So yeah, and because we got, I think, 18 minutes of broadcast time, which is quite a lot as well for.
It was.
Yeah,
it
for a non-offer.
Well, you were right at the end as well of the series, weren't you?
Yeah. And so yeah, we did really well out of it, to be fair. And you had the little initial spike when we were on, obviously, with the online orders. But to be fair, I think a lot of it has really helped since then. We have it on the website still saying as seen on Dragon's Den. Yeah. You're allowed to do that until you get told off. We haven't been told off yet, so because you sign a thing saying you won't do any of this, but then everyone does. So. Yeah,
I've seen that before.
Yeah. And then we got on every venue as seen on Dragon's Den. So it's just that thing. It gives people that it's what's the word? It's like a reassurance that you're a more well-known brand than they may have heard of. So it gives them that first little, oh yeah, I've heard of these guys, even if they haven't.
Between These Walls is a podcast just for York. We want to keep it growing and provide more local content that you want to hear. So there are 3 ways you can help. Firstly, I'm on the lookout for local sponsors. If you're from a York business and want to promote on this podcast, drop us an email to btw@soapyproductions.co.uk. That's btw@soapy, SOAPY, productions.co.uk. Secondly, if you know someone who should be featured on Between These Walls, let me know. I'm looking for the people who make York special. That's anyone from an interesting business or with an unusual story, perhaps a charity doing amazing things, or someone working hard under the radar to make York better. Let me know who I need to talk to. Just email btw@soapyproductions.co.uk. And finally, you can help this podcast grow right now by subscribing. Wherever you're listening, just hit the subscribe button and that helps us out massively. Also, follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn if you just search for Between These Walls York. Thank you. Now back to the conversation. It must have been, going back to the recording, it must have been fairly exhausting being grilled for 3 hours. As you say.
3.5 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3.5 hours.
It was probably the toughest thing we've ever done, and not just the recording. So before that, we had to prepare documents, and it was about like 2 Argos catalogues thick. There's an old reference for you. Of
I remember.
Of documents, printed out pieces of A4 paper. That thick, so like a good 3 inches thick of paperwork we had to print out and send off to them, proving every kind of contract we'd signed. And then everything we said on the Den, They then fact-checked, which is not great with me all the time because I have a habit of making up stuff. There was things like social media posts. You said, oh, you did this such and such, can you prove it? So we had to again print it all off. We were literally printing off the internet to send back to them, and it was just so that they could prove for broadcast that none of it was lies. And that whole process took ages and ages and ages, and I think a couple of times I said to Ben, is it really worth this? Let's just not do it.
Yeah.
But to be fair to Ben, his tenacity, he was like, let's just do it. We've got this far, let's just do it. Yeah. And Ben is very much a won't give up person, whereas if something gets too hard, I can be a bit, what's the point?
Yeah.
So and I think that's what makes us a good partnership, is that actually we help each other in our weaknesses and our strengths. I don't give a damn about numbers in terms of how much money's in the bank each day. Ben worries enormously. So it's quite a happy medium.
Yeah. Not to point it out, but I think that came across.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. It's I'm like, well, whatever. I don't know. And to be fair, I did spot before we went into the den. So we filmed it in March 2023, and it went out 24.
Yeah. Other way around.
Other way around. Yeah. No. June 22, and it went out in 23.
Yeah.
Honestly, I've just been doing stuff for Christmas 25, believe it or not. So I never know what year it is. Yeah, so 22, 23. And we filmed it in June 22, and it went out in March 23. That way around, that's right. So when we did that, we were like, you don't expect to be going now 9 months later. I think the World Cup played a part why it went out so late. And in that process of taking so long, we almost gave up on it and didn't think it was ever going to get broadcast. And then we got that final, it's going out. And thankfully they let us have a sneak preview as well, which was quite nice. We got to watch it over a secure link on it's like a 2-inch little square on a screen. So we couldn't really see what was going on, but we could hear it. Yeah. And we were quite confident after that of it going out. So, and then just looked forward to it as a moment, really.
Yeah, brilliant. You mentioned about your partnership between you and Ben Fry.
Yep.
Who couldn't be here today, but when did that happen? So obviously you had the cufflinks, cufflink shop, and then how did that happen then between you and
Ben? I'd become chair of the York Retail Forum. I'd become quite try and say this not too cocky away, I'd become quite mouthy. Yeah. When I said stuff, people had to listen because I was speaking on behalf of business in York. So obviously I'd come to the attention of local media. Davey Dunning at Minster FM at the time had done a few news stories on me, and then went to York Races. I'm trying to think what year this would have been, probably 2016. And I was a judge on the fashion lawn because the Cufflinks sponsored the men's prize, and Ben was the host on behalf of the radio station. And we met for the first time then, and then we came up with this idea that we'd do a 5-minute weekly little, we still do it on York Mix now, called Biz Mix. Yep. And just basically do a 5-minute on the show and talk about what the business news is that's different, that maybe people haven't spotted, particularly in terms of the city centre. And it sort of flourished from there. And I do remember Ben saying to me a few months in, like, we have to do business together. We have to do something together because, I think it would be great. And I was like, okay. And we had a couple of weird links. Ben had this weird profile on Minster's page about what he liked, and we're both born in the same year for one, which just coincidental, and went to school at the same time. So we're into things like Star Wars and Avengers and cool stuff like that, and we're both big kids at heart, but also same taste in music and just weird stuff. So it was kind of a really good relationship that blossomed really early. We hate each other now, but it's early on it was great. It's been and I think that actually I never realised being a solo entrepreneur up until then, and starting my own business on my own, doing everything on my own, and messing things up. But actually, what I needed was that business partner. And to be fair, I think it's why the business has done so well. We both could have probably had the idea solely to do what we've done, but by doing it together, I think we've done it to a much better level. I chase growth. I love growth. Ben loves making sure we've got enough money in the bank each month to pay all the bills. Boring, but yeah, and I think by being together and having all those assets together in one thing, we've created a great business. And we've done things that, like, Ben persuades me to do things that are out my comfort zone. Like, I'm very much a believer that I can do everything, so I will try and do everything myself, from fixing a toilet to all sorts of weird stuff. And Ben is like, let's just get somebody in. Yeah. And Ben's skill strength on the opposite there is that he will get someone, and if he knows he can't do it, and it's good to share those two skills. Like, I've encouraged Ben to do stuff that I know he can do, but likewise, I don't fix toilets anymore. So only in an emergency.
Brilliant. So let's talk about the growth then. So obviously, since you started to now, it's doing very well.
Yep.
How do you see that transpiring over the next couple of years? Obviously, you've got loads of plans.
Yeah. So I'm apparently in charge of acquisitions. It was a glorious title the board bestowed on me and then regretted it ever since. So not only Director of Wizardry, but I'm Director of Wizardry Acquisitions is my full title.
I mean, that sounds cool.
It is, isn't it? It's a very cool title.
I think you should just put Wizardry on
I do.
Every title.
I do. I just have Director of Wizardry on LinkedIn, and it makes lots of people laugh. And to be fair, it's a very good way of getting connected to people that would otherwise ignore you. Yeah. I think I'm connected to the head of retail for Lego.
Wow.
And he's based in Denmark. He's not because I was trying to encourage Lego to come to York, and we had a good serious chat about it. So it just shows you that actually that title is really, really good. Yeah. And have fun with job titles. I mean, why are job titles so boring a lot of the time? Yeah. It's because we're not...
Or you don't know what they mean. You don't know what they do. And half the time I don't think people know what their title means.
Exactly. So just make something up. Yeah. It's a lot cooler. So Ben's his Chief Enchantment Officer, CEO. Yeah. See what he did there.
Excellent.
And I'm Director of Wizardry. Basically, he pays the bills and I spend it. So is the kind of split. But yeah, so I'm in charge of acquisitions and growth, which essentially we decided as a group the most profitable part of the business is the holding wand. Yeah. So the holding wand will be rolled out into at least every region, at least an hour apart. And we sort of set ourselves some little kind of caveats when we're looking. So one of the things is brown signs. So does the place have brown signs? So for example, in York has brown signs. Yeah. Go to the Minster, go to the York Viking Museum, and then we try and get near one of those places on that brown sign. So in York, we're opposite the York Viking Centre. In Blackpool, we're next to Blackpool Tower. Yep. So in Keswick, we're going to be next to the Pencil Museum and the town centre. So hopefully, as we roll out in these places, you'll see that we've stuck to those kind of principles a little bit. But also, it's doing that research before you go in. We have made mistakes. You mentioned the Potions Express. We were flattered to be chased by LNER to open in the station and create something there. And I think, to be honest, we didn't really know what it was when we opened it. Yeah. But since then, we've rethought it all through. And actually, to take if you know York Station, there's two massive billboards above the entrance as you come in. Yeah. And they cost, I think, something like 14,000 to 18,000 a year. Wow. So our shop, as long as the concept we've now taken is, because when it's closed, we actually have billboards on the shutters. So it's like our own advertisement panel when we're closed. Yeah. So we're looking at it now, as long as we can cover our costs and actually now, since we've rolled out the new plan, it's actually doing really well. So it just goes to show you, and we've put local products in there. So we've got local bacon sourced from Shambles Butchers, and we make the bacon butties for breakfast. To be honest, really, really good. So yeah, it's thinking about those little key connections. You can make something better. I don't think we'll roll out the Potions Express. There's not enough money in it. The Potions Cauldron as a brand, I think, could roll out. We've obviously done Edinburgh, and I think London would be an obvious next place to take that. London's not the easiest place to negotiate premises.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Neither Scotland, to be fair. And York always will be our home. So we've actually got 2 premises in York we are about to sign for, not too far away from our original home. And as I said, we'll be doing something completely different there.
Ah, exciting. Can you give us any little hint, or do we have to wait?
Still in the hospitality style sector, but we're trying to do the full package now. So, okay. Yeah. And I think it's going to be exciting. It'll be a whole new brand. I realise we've got some issues there as well, because our original brand name idea happens to be owned by a very large company. So we got to do, but they don't use it. So we're in negotiations with them about, can we have it? Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. And we're in that position now as a company where we've never made a loss. We've at least, we went from 270 grand turnover in the first year. This year we've just done... So 24, what year are we in now?
Are these numbers again? Are you just making up numbers again?
I'm making up numbers again. So last year, we did just over 2 million. And then this year, we should easily hit 3 million. And then next year, if we open the 2 venues, I expect we'll probably easily 5 million. So you can see that growth now. Yeah. And I had it explained to me in a chat by Piers Linney, who was a former Dragon's Den star as well. He was talking about kind of like growth of how ideas come about, and he was talking about AI and how that's going to be exponential, and it's, if you think of it of algae in a pond, it doubles in size every day. So And he says that's how growth should work in a business that's growing well, is actually when you get to your third year, you've doubled, and doubling again is huge, but actually it's really easy because you've got everything in place to just replicate that again.
Yeah.
So your growth will stay on the same kind of percentile, but as you grow, it's much easier.
Yeah.
And to be fair, he's probably right there, because as we open new venues now, it's almost becomes a process and quite simple, and get designers in, get it all agreed. And we've actually signed off the designs for Keswick before we actually signed the building. So it just shows you how some processes are more simple than dealing with lawyers.
Yeah. yeah. A lot can be said for that. Yeah.
Indeed.
So we haven't talked much about the hole in wand. So this is an attraction. Like you said, it's opposite Jorvik.
Yep.
And again, I've always noticed a long queue out the door whenever I walk past, especially around holiday times.
Yep.
This really is it's kind of a, I don't know, how do you feel about its position within the sort of tourist industry in York?
Yeah, we want to be a tourist attraction. We don't want to be just another thing to do for locals on their own. We want it to be for everyone. So our local customer base, obviously very important, but we want to attract tourists as well, and attract people to York as a fun. And there's a few ideas behind it, really. So one was during COVID. When COVID hit, we'd signed a deal with a new bottling company that we would make at least 200,000 bottles of drink a year. And then COVID hit, we got an order cancelled from Hamleys that was worth about £8,000 to us, which was huge at the time. 4 pallets of drinks, and we were like, oh, what are we going to do? We could have held Hamleys to it. We had a purchase order, invoice had gone out. But had we held Hamleys to that, we probably would have lost Hamleys as a customer, because they'd have got those drinks and they would have gone off by the time they'd been able to sell them.
Yeah.
So we decided we'd do our own things, sold it online. And then Ben and I were chatting. I'd been in to do some work at the shop during lockdown, check the meters, that kind of stuff. And I noticed that the former Russell's restaurant in York, which was the old carvery place on Coppergate, was empty. And I was like, should we roll forward our idea? We'd already had the idea for the mini golf. Should we have a look at our idea for the mini golf? And then Ben came up with the name The Hole in Wand. And we were like, let's do it. So arranged to go and see it. And we got a virtual tour from the estate agent during lockdown. He sent us a little video through. We thought it looked amazing. We were thinking 13 holes, because Wizard Golf, why not? Have a different number. And then basically by the time we got the offer in, somebody else had put a better offer in to keep it as a restaurant. And it was already a restaurant, so that was always going to win, because less hassle for the landlord. But then they said, what about Patisserie Valley around the corner? And I was like, well, they didn't object because it's their building. And they basically moved out, but unbeknown to them, they'd not paid their rent pre-COVID. So they'd already been issued with legal notice by the landlord. So during lockdown, the locks were changed. Landlord took possession of the building, and we took the building from Patisserie Valley as lockdown 1 ended. We started to fit out, but we weren't able to open until nearly a year after, in May 27. May, I can't remember what year now. I'm terrible with numbers.
Again.
Yeah,
it's numbers
it
again.
is.
It's fine, don't worry.
But whatever year it was when we opened after May 21.
Yeah.
We opened. We were hoping to open for Christmas. We didn't. Thankfully for us, we came up with the idea of doing a hot chocolate cafe.
Yeah.
So we did open for 6 weeks. We were going to plan on carrying on that until the Hole in Wand opened, but then we got another lockdown, so we had to close it again. But by having that quick opening, we actually qualified for a reopening grant, which actually probably saved the business, because we were fast running out of cash. Things had gone on far longer than anybody expected. And we opened the Hole in Wand too. And to be honest, had we known this, we'd have put tickets on sale a lot sooner. But as soon as we put tickets on sale, we had pre-sales up until the Christmas of that year. And we were like, what? People are booking for December. It's not even May yet. And that was the month before we opened. So it was really, really good early boost for us. And we were really confident it was going to be an idea that would work.
Yeah.
Really has. And we've done a different story in every location. We've changed the narrative as we've moved on. So we've invested probably the same money we spent on the original build in York again, and created 2 new holes where the toilets were to help with the flow. So we took the old toilets out, we put an extra hole in, and actually changed the whole flow of the building, so there's more space in between the holes for people to wait, things like that. And we're always happy to invest. And Ben's very much somebody that if he goes to a venue and he sees like a bit of paint that's not been painted, he gets very upset. As I call it, theming. So the venues will always be up to a very high standard, and probably higher than other places you'd go to, don't want to name any, but, like other kind of like big names where you'll go and you'll see tatty stuff. I don't think you ever will with us because we are very high on the kind of repair it, and we want everyone to have the same enjoyable experience as the day it opened.
Yeah.
And I think we'll always continue to do that.
Yeah. And I think that's probably a theme from today speaking to you, is the sort of nuances, the little details of the things that really matter, like your titles, using wizardry, and all the little details that you have. It really does bring everything together.
It does totally, and that is it. It's having that full picture and the full story, like you say. It's it is important as a company and as a brand, and just daft little things. And we've even made an acquisition now of another company, which we took over one called Wizards Gold last year, who was somebody that we used to work with, Oliver, who used to run a Harry Potter style shop in Brighton. He's then created his own spirit brand. And then he was looking to close the brand down, and we were like, well, can we buy it off you? And we really liked his cool shaped bottle. He's got a wizard shaped bottle he'd managed to create. And we've now expanded that, and we've rolled out some new drinks into it. And it's got its own standalone website. If that'll stay forever, I don't know. But certainly the brand will stay as, that's what we'll always call our spirit drinks now from here forward, is they'll always be known as Wizards Gold. So we're also open to new ideas and continuing the story and the narrative, and like you say, creating new journeys along that path and then trying to fit them in. So, and as we open in Keswick, for example, we're already fitting in how Keswick links to. So we look up the history of the local places. So the Blackpool Holding One, for example, links to the Pendle Witch Trials. The one in Keswick is going to link to some serpent stones within the lakes.
Oh wow!
So so there's everywhere you go, there's wizardry and witchcraft. So it's tying in and putting it as part of our story, but almost just taking that whole story as part of ours, really, as well. So
yeah. And I suppose, have you lived in York your whole life?
Not my whole life, but I have I've actually only lived in York for 2 years, but I live just outside, you see. But I've been in and around York for 15 years now, so yeah.
So understanding York and the history and the stories, has that helped you sort of realise that that's really important? Yeah,
I think so. And to be fair, that my shop in the Shambles, when I first took it as my shop and not as our shop, it was the most historic shop on the street, and it was always something that amused me because the Catholic Church bought what they believe is to be the shrine of Margaret Clitheroe based on the door number. So I think theirs is something like number 34. And Margaret Clitheroe apparently lived at number 34. But back in the day of ye oldie times, house numbers were not numbered chronologically. They were numbered on the order they were built. There was no post office. There was no reason that one followed two followed one, three, and so on in an order. Yeah. So it was whatever number your house was built in that street, that's what it became. Yeah. So number 10 Shambles, as our shop is, was actually Margaret Clitheroe's house, because it's got the priest hall behind the fireplace and that kind of stuff. And the Catholic Church came along to buy a shrine when the street was earmarked for demolition and bought the wrong house. Something they still don't admit to this day. But they do admit that the property they own is not her original house. It's just a shrine to her. Yeah. Which just kind of shows you that how backstories and things are important, and research and stuff. So yeah. But yeah, like you say, York is very much tied into that, and it's very much a storytelling city. And I think that's why this business was able to flourish here.
So let's talk more about York then. What do you love about York? That's a very simple question.
It's a great place to do business. York has, having retailed in other places and in other locations, York has peaks when other cities have downs. So traditionally August, for lots of places, if you go to somewhere like Wigan or Wakefield, or I think somewhere that doesn't begin with W, these places will actually have a dip in August. The kids are on holiday, lots of people take holidays, so your natural local communities disappear. August is the busiest month of the year in York. The only busier time in the whole year is October half term, and that's because it's the last holidays before Christmas, so lots of people again take it off work as a week off work. And again, in other locations, sweet shops in other locations will have dips, and it's like, oh, really? And it just shows you it's a completely different place. And because of its tourism, because of its new, like now since the M1's been built, it's much easier to get here from other parts of Yorkshire. And it's actually flourished, and it's done really, really well as a city. But also at that time, it hasn't changed very much. Its history is still very, very important. You go to some places that are as historical, and they've put up big buildings. They've ruined it a bit. And whilst, growth is great, you've got to respect the past as well as the history. So, yeah. And whilst I'm also very critical of kind of like local structures and councils, and I do always say that, that's because we are one of the best cities in the country.
Yeah.
But I want us to retain that.
Yeah.
And that's why the high standards and high things are so important.
And it's important to speak out about things, isn't it?
Exactly.
Because I'm going to say it, you are known to be quite outspoken.
Yes, very, very.
For those who know you, for those who don't.
Follow me on Twitter.
Yeah, you are known to sort of speak out, but I'm assuming it comes from a place of love.
Exactly, and that's exactly what it's all about. It's trying to retain that for York as being the best city in England. We were once the capital of this country, and, in my mind, wrongly not anymore, but we are as equally important in the history of this country as London is and as Oxford is. And I think one thing I always say when I'm attracting other retailers to come here is that, we're probably the most unique number of visitors to come to York out of any other city in the north, certainly. London probably is the only other place where it's higher. But, Manchester and Leeds might have 30, 40 million footfalls, but 90% of that is the same people going to work every day.
Yeah.
Whereas in York, 90% of our footfall is unique visitors, maybe coming 2-3 times a year, but no more. So, yeah, we're a great city to do business, and I think it's going to be a huge flourish in the next. I think that's my word of this podcast, isn't it? I've used it a lot today.
Yeah, no, like it.
And I think it's going to be a huge kind of like growth opportunity for York. It's tourism, and I think it's starting to realise that actually tourism is important.
Yeah. How important is it for businesses to pull together and sort of keep it that way? I mean, you're quite good at bringing people together, aren't you, and making sure that everybody knows what's going on.
Yeah, totally. And during lockdown, we started a WhatsApp group for the retail forum. We had over 200 businesses in it, just so we could keep people up to date with kind of news from the council, news from government. I used to work before this as probably going to start another podcast now, Sophie. I used to work as a parliamentary lobbyist.
Yeah.
So
wow.
Information had always been something that I realised was very important, and actually getting information to the right people. You can make things happen. You can change things. You can change government policy. You can stop an act of parliament happening because the information was in the wrong place at the right time. And I think I basically in a much smaller location as York, and I realised how easy that was to make influence, and so bringing people together has been a really key thing to making that happen, and getting voices heard. Like, for example, the Lendal Bridge, changing it as a one-way system, that really helped with businesses coming together and changing the whole policy of a whole city that had already happened, and they managed to reverse that. And I don't think that's happened in many places, but it just goes to show you that things can change, and quickly as well, if you got the campaign ready to go.
So what do you think needs to be done in York to make it better?
I think some of the simple things that need to happen is that we need to continue as we are. So I think the bid was an enormous changing factor for the city centre, for example. We started having Christmas lights, and what an enormous difference that has made to the city. The bridges look amazing at Christmas and into the new year as well. But I think what needs to change as a city is, I think we need to come together more. We need to work with some of the bigger companies better, the likes of Nestle, and make them feel more part of the city still. And yeah, I really think we can change big things and attract investment in that way as well. And give you some examples there, like we don't have a bonfire night in York that's official, or fireworks display, despite the fact that Guy Fawkes came from here.
Yeah.
And you're like, when you say that to people, you're a bit like, oh yeah, and they go, what about the Huntington bonfire? Yeah, it's Huntington, it's not York, is it? It's not. Nothing happens in the centre of York from the city where the man came from that the whole story is about.
Yeah.
And then New Year's Eve, thousands of people traipse to York to look at the Minster clock, and that's it. That's all that happens. And you're like, so we do let some big events go by, and I think we could do a lot better in capitalising on some of these, doing cooler things, and working together better as a city. Some really cool things that I think will come about, like one of my big ones recently was tier scooters. So got on the campaign to our own Wizard HQ. We've got them outside now, and I want to see more businesses use them. So myself and Ben frequently use them now. Instead of taking the car into town for a meeting, we'll just nip on a tier scooter into town. It's quicker, it's cheaper, it's easier.
Yep.
And I think if we can encourage others to get on board with things like that, we'll free up gridlock. Yeah, it's dead simple stuff. And that comes about by going, oh, we did it. And they go, oh, really? How hard was that? Well, just emailed Tier, and within the same afternoon, we had 8 scooters in the car park, and it cost us nothing.
Yep.
And that kind of way of doing stuff, I think, has to be encouraged and has to be easier. And I think I found it easy because I've never had an issue with emailing anyone. So I have regular meetings with council leaders and stuff like that. And as soon as you can find yourself a title, you can start lobbying. And that's it. I just think about lobbying, because if you can lobby for your own little issues and your own little beliefs, then you're going to make the city better.
Yeah.
And it's about getting those stories heard. And one thing I'll tell you about that we did recently for just Christmas just gone, I heard a story from a guy called Chris Dowd on Twitter, who I follow, who grew up growing in care. He was for want of a better word, an orphan, left the system at 18. They get given your own flat. They give them money to do up the flat and stuff like that. But you're then on your own. So your first Christmas, you might not have any presents. So he does a thing in Manchester now where he gets presents together for the young care leavers. And so he was doing this, and I thought, messaged York Council and said, how many people like this in York are there? Came back, it's 119. So we helped at putting together some packs for them, worked with the York Mix, Toy Appeal, get some gifts for the older kids. We gave some from the Potions Cauldron. York City gave some football tickets and some scarves. Tia Scooters gave some vouchers, and we're put together some great packs. Hopefully this year it's going to be even better, and we'll work on that and build on that. And it's just simple things like that you can do as a city to look after your own and also share that message that I think is so important, that makes it a better community altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just about business, it's about, like you say, looking after your own.
Yeah, and having that responsibility to where you do business.
And it makes York a better place.
It does indeed.
Yeah. Well, Phil, thank you so much for your time. I'm not going to keep you any longer. It's been really interesting to talk to you. Thank you for your time. And hopefully we'll speak again soon. And I will book to go along to the Hole in Wand, because I've still not done it yet.
Well, as I said, I've only done it a few times myself, so maybe we'll do it together.
I think we should.
Next podcast, could do it as an early one.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah,
I don't know how it would work technically.
I don't quite know how good I am at it. But well, give it a go. You might. Have you got any windows in there? Because I might break a few.
You'd be surprised. We thought about that. So we have fiberglass putters, and all the windows are covered in some special plastic.
Good thinking.
Yep.
Especially if I come along. No, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is a Soapy Productions podcast.